Have you heard about the recent development in the conflict between the US and the Houthi rebels in Yemen? In a series of targeted actions, the US military has launched a barrage of airstrikes against Houthi-controlled sites in Yemen. These strikes came in response to the Houthi rebels' brazen attacks on commercial shipping vessels in the Red Sea, a vital artery of global trade. Over the span of a single day, 28 locations were targeted, hitting more than 60 objectives. Despite the significant number of strikes, the US military assessed that a radar site still posed a considerable threat to maritime traffic. This assessment led to further strikes, underscoring the gravity of the situation. President Joe Biden had previously warned of the possibility of additional strikes against the Houthis. Following his warning, the US Navy issued a stern advisory to vessels sailing under the American flag, urging them to steer clear of areas around Yemen for the next 72 hours. This advisory came in the wake of the US and UK's retaliatory strikes against the Houthi rebels. The Houthis, however, remain undeterred by the international response. They have pledged to continue their attacks in support of Hamas and have vowed to retaliate against the US and UK strikes. This defiant stance raises the prospect of a wider conflict, one that could potentially engulf the region in further turmoil. The stakes are high, and the situation remains fraught with uncertainty. The Pentagon confirmed that these decisive strikes were ordered by none other than Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who commanded the operation while recovering from surgery. As we speak, the extent of the damage inflicted by these strikes and their impact on the Houthis' capabilities is still under careful assessment. The resolution of this conflict hangs in the balance as the world watches, hoping for a swift and peaceful resolution. But as the dust settles and the smoke clears, one thing is for sure. The US is prepared to take the necessary steps to protect its interests and uphold international maritime law. What might be the aftermath of these airstrikes? It's a question that echoes in the halls of power and reverberates across the globe. The potential for retaliation from the Houthis is high, and they've already vowed to strike back. This raises the specter of a broader conflict in a region already roiled by strife and tension. The Houthis, it should be noted, have a track record of engaging in maritime warfare. In a series of audacious attacks, they've targeted commercial ships in the strategically critical Red Sea. These attacks, ostensibly carried out to support Hamas, have often put vessels with no known ties to Israel in harm's way. The US's response to these attacks has been firm and decisive, with President Biden warning of further strikes if the aggression continues. The Houthis' actions have led the US to label them a terrorist group, a designation that carries significant implications. President Biden has been forthright in his assessment, stating his belief that the Houthis are indeed terrorists. This represents an escalation in the rhetoric and sets the stage for a possible intensification of the conflict. Yet the strikes have not been without controversy. Critics have questioned the legality of the administration's actions, pointing to the lack of congressional authorization. President Biden, however, has defended the strikes, arguing that the need to protect international commerce and personnel justified the decision. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, even while recovering from surgery, ordered the military action, underscoring the gravity of the situation. The aftermath of these airstrikes is still unfolding, and the full range of potential consequences remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the US is determined to respond robustly to threats to its interests and to the free flow of commerce in the world's strategic waterways. In spite of the criticism, President Biden stands by his decision to carry out the strikes without congressional authorization. The stage is set, the players are in place, and the world watches with bated breath as the next act in this geopolitical drama unfolds. How are the Houthis responding to these strikes, and what is the wider context of this situation? Let's start with the Houthis' response. In the face of this aggressive onslaught, they have made it clear that they will not sit quietly. They have vowed retaliation, warning the US and its allies of the consequences for their actions. This bold defiance raises the potential for an escalating conflict, further destabilizing an already volatile region. But to fully comprehend the situation, we need to zoom out and look at the wider context. Yemen has been embroiled in a protracted conflict since the Houthis seized control of the capital. Within this turmoil, the Houthis have repeatedly targeted commercial vessels in the Red Sea. They justify their attacks as a response to Israel's offensive against Hamas in Gaza. but it's not always clear-cut. There have been instances where they've attacked vessels with no apparent links to Israel, threatening a key trade and energy route and causing international concern. Now let's talk about the Houthis' status as a terrorist organization. The Trump administration had labeled them a foreign terrorist organization and specially designated global terrorists. However, the Biden administration removed these labels in 2021, a move that was seen as controversial by some. Fast forward to today, and the White House is considering reinstating these labels after the Houthis' attacks on civilian vessels. President Biden himself has acknowledged that he considers the Houthis a terrorist group, reflecting the changing dynamics of this conflict. All of this paints a complex picture of a situation far from resolution. The recent U.S. strikes are but a chapter in a larger story, one filled with political maneuvering, strategic retaliations, and an underlying struggle for power and control. And as the Houthis promise to retaliate, the world watches on, waiting for the next move in this geopolitical chess game. The Houthis' military spokesperson has warned that the U.S. strikes will not go unanswered. To summarize the key points we've discussed today, the United States, in response to Houthi rebel attacks on commercial shipping vessels, has launched a series of airstrikes on Houthi-controlled sites in Yemen. The strikes targeted radar sites, weapons storage facilities, and launch sites. Despite the initial barrage of strikes, the U.S. determined that a radar site still posed a significant threat to maritime traffic, leading to additional strikes. President Joe Biden had previously warned of further strikes against the Houthis and affirmed his belief that they are indeed a terrorist group. This comes after the administration removed the foreign terrorist organization and specially designated global terrorists labels from the Houthis in 2021. The Houthis, on the other hand, have pledged to retaliate, raising the potential for a broader conflict. The rebels have repeatedly targeted ships in the Red Sea, even those with no clear links to Israel, endangering shipping and a crucial trade and energy route. It's clear that the situation between the U.S. and the Houthi rebels in Yemen is complex and evolving. We'll keep you updated as more developments come to light.